Back to
All
the
right, so
show, as always, we got Rob from Cinema Sharks. How you
real shark.
been? Yeah, I wish I was a shark. I want to be a shark. Can I be a shark, please?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good out here in the Valley of the Sun. Just
The
chilling,
Valley of the Sun.
tearing up bad movies. Actually been taking a break from the movies. To be honest with you, there's just been so many that I've been so disappointed in. It's just been like I can't keep my standards low enough. You know what I mean? To not be disappointed by something or
Right,
something.
people hype it up or say it's garbage when it hasn't even come out yet, and I'm just like,
Right.
dude, you think that's bad? Just you wait. There's gonna be bigger shit next year. Steaming
So,
Violence.
so Lord of the Rings, man,
The
Rings of
Rings of
Power.
Power. So, are you
So we
already a
were kind of
big?
discussing this before you hit before we came on air.
Yeah,
So I think my opinion is going to be kind of I'm going to agree and disagree on a lot of things. So I guess I should start off by saying I love Lord of the Rings, love it.
Peter
I
Jackson
think
and Tolkien.
From the books to the movie, I love it, and I think the movies are a personification of what I call a perfect film. They really are truly perfect films. They are magnificent in so many ways. The detail, the props, the music, the actors. There's so many things in the Lord of the Ring, all three of them, that make them so great. And like I said, near perfect
Extended
films.
especially. Just
Yeah, I mean, even the extended cuts are great too. And
it's not
sometimes
just
when I'm
extra scenery, guys. It's extra plot
it's
arcs and even
right, it
grittier.
is. It needed to be there, and I'm sad that he had to cut it out for time. Peter Jackson did, but it was I just think even all the extended stuff is really, really necessary. And overall, they're great movies. Now, when we got to the show, I this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to start off with the good things that I liked about the show.
No, it's fine. That's what we're all about. Don't
I
hold back.
liked I liked the acting. I thought the actors who they chose were pretty good.
Hmm.
I think the props, special effects, everything that needed to be to create the essence of Lord of the Rings was there. However, though, if I'm mistaken, please correct me, Cam. I believe they had a guy who was a guy who was an expert on the lore of Tolkien and his work, and they actually let him go into the season. I believe if it was, I might
Yeah,
be
I mean, I think so. I did see something is like they had some experts so called on set, and I mean, the Tolkien estate signed off on it. So when I would see people
right.
who liked it or didn't like it and said it's unofficial, I'm like, no, guys, this is sanctioned.
Yeah,
You don't have to
and
like it, but don't pretend that someone didn't approve of this before all the paperwork was done.
right. And see, that's the problem. I thought it was good in a lot of essence. Like it is Lord of the Rings. It really is. It's
Yeah,
beautiful. It's beautiful. It's beautiful scenery, beautiful cinematics, beautiful everything. One of the key issues I have with it though is you can definitely tell Tolkien's poetic dialogue is not there. His poetic
yeah,
dialogue is definitely missing, which
yeah.
is
I
kind
think
of
as close as they got was one song, which I seem to
yeah,
recall being from one of the books, but that's it. Yeah, they chose to speak their own way, so I can totally understand if because between you and I have encountered people who didn't like the movies or the cartoons. They were just that sacred about the book, like it was their
books,
Bible.
yeah.
It was what got them into fantasy movies, let
Mhm.
alone books and comics. And I would not be surprised if we see people who are like, I didn't like any version. I still am waiting for a good version. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see people on the net who are actually mature and ready to talk about what they do and don't like on a forum who might be like, there's just some stuff. It's just very hard to replicate from that. It's the
It
same
really
thing I
is.
get with Tom Clancy guys. I see people who haven't liked most versions of the Jack Ryan character,
I'm one of them.
No, that's fine. Hey, see,
Yeah. I
good,
don't
good
think you
segue.
can capture Tom Clancy's books in a movie. I just don't. It's hard. It's hard.
Totally.
Um,
There's some comics like they're redoing Spawn, and I'm like, why? This Spawn is
yeah,
just so
really.
good as a comic and a
Yeah.
cartoon. There's just some stuff that you just
I
can't do
like the
without.
movie. I'm one of the very few that actually do like the movie, but
Great
that's neither
soundtrack.
here nor there. But but what I really liked, I did like the show, and I appreciated it. I want all the listeners out there to know,
I
I
thought
did
of you, my dude, when I saw that when they're in the village fight and they're trying to avoid getting impaled in the eye. That's as horror as it got. I was like, whoa, Rob's gonna have something to say about this.
No, I liked it. I mean, it
I
was,
was like, oh, are they really gonna?
it was brutality, but with me. So
Yeah,
that was,
no,
let's clear
that's
that
true.
up. The
That's a
brutality
good
moved
point
the
too.
story.
It's no, that is a good point because you look at movies that are technically true crime before that was a big genre, like Goodfellas and Boys Don't Cry, and you can't say they're exploitation movies like other B pictures where they're well-meaning but kind of uneven in realism and everything, you know. And it is interesting
Yeah,
how here, yeah, we have a pretty earnest fantasy that it has violence, but it's not for I mean, Peter Jackson is a gorehound, but he does it with
it's classy violence.
You're right. Yes, thank you. It's like Walter Hill and Antoine Fuqua. They're gonna wait and have some proper build up before they let all the bloody squibs, fly
Hmm.
peck and paw style. And yeah,
In a way though, too, I appreciate that a little bit. A movie I can actually kind of point to right off the top of my head. I just watched it the other day because I loved it so much. It's actually one I do rewatch. Is The King, Netflix. The King. In the beginning of the
yeah,
movie, he actually does this speech about how England's that way, and he just goes, and you don't even see him stab the guy. You just know he does it, and it's like it's still brutal, but you don't need to see it. The sound is what makes it.
and just
Oh,
the
enough.
music and everything.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but Rings of Power, though, I just felt like this was also the issue with the plot is we have Lord of the Rings, as we were
right.
both saying, some of the greatest
Hmm.
movies ever. And it's an end. It's a means to an end. So when this prequel was made, it seemed like they were like, okay, guys, so we're here at the start of A. We got to get to Z. And it's
Yeah,
like, we're going to get there. But there was just parts where they were like, okay, we want to jump. We want to jump. We want to jump and make it more like exciting or bring some more, specifics where it's broad or make it more broad where it's specific. And it just kind of took the story a little sideways, I thought. And
it took some adjusting. Would you say?
yeah, and it's not entirely the show's fault because it is a show. And you're meant to follow different characters. And I think that's where a lot of people, including myself, were almost kind of tripped up in a little bit of it because it was like kind of Games of Thrones-ish. You had a bunch of different
Yeah.
characters that you follow down these plots. And while it is good, is it Lord of the Rings though? That's
No,
kind
that's
of
a
what
good question. I no, that is the ultimate question we're trying to get because we're not here for the toxic fandom. We're here to just say, well, why would a legit person who's got no agenda, got no stuck upness, like this or hate this? Like, for instance, we mentioned earlier how I wouldn't recommend this to anyone if they're already not a fantasy head or not
right.
into rings to begin with. But who knows? I don't know because we did a profile on all three directors who were attached to this, and they've done everything from Outlander and the Dick Wolf shows to one of the Jurassic World movies and the real life disaster film The Impossible. And one of them was a newcomer who had also done some British period piece stuff. But no, that we kind of also got touched on that with the new Star Wars shows. There seems to be some people who really violently love or violently hate Book of Boba Fett,
Yeah.
Andor, and even the Obi-Wan show. And
Me personally, I'm just happy Disney was listening to, I'm sorry, the Real Sharks podcast, and we just put this out there. Actually, we're going to be dropping this that someone at Disney officially listens to us because we've always said Star Wars should just be a soap opera because that's what
there
George
you
Lucas
go.
wanted it to be.
A
And now
space
they
opera, soap
basically
opera.
are making a fucking Young and the Restless, but of Jedi now with this new Acolyte show they're making, which is
Right?
basically going to be about all these different Jedi. It's like pretty soon, watch cam, we're going to get Disney daily space operas. Watch of Star
Daily
Wars. You
space
just wait; it'll
operas.
get there eventually.
They have to eventually. And I kind of feel like we were even making predictions with Lore of the Rings, good podcast, check it out, and that they might even do a wizard show for Rings soon. Let's show the Balrogs. Let's show the entire wizards who were either corrupted or killed by
Right.
Saruman, or who Gandalf just couldn't find. They went missing during the siege of Middle Earth in the Third Age.
And see, that was some of the problems too. Like there was so much beating around the bush with things. Like when Gandalf comes, like they hint at it. So is this Gandalf? But it's like, come on, we know it was, and that's why he loves the
I actually
hobbits.
didn't. I figured it was Saruman or
Oh,
Sauron at
really? I,
first.
I figured it was Gandalf. I was like, oh,
But
okay.
no,
I thought
you're not the
actually,
only
hold on.
one. I knew
I
others
thought it was
who were
Saruman at
like,
first too.
oh, Lord of the Rings had it where he had one specific line of dialogue, and he's like, he says that in the book and the movie, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, yeah. But in all fairness, I mean, so what do you think of the? I keep going back to the usual suspects because, I always love it when there's a good Hans Gruber or another bank thief who just one ups everyone. What do you think of Adar? How he could go and is he Sauron? No, he's a dark elf. He's Adar. He's just helping the real guy, Helmbrandt, who is the actual Sauron.
Yeah, I think it's that one. I think he's basically a pawn in this whole scheme too.
But it's just so wild. He gets away after doing the
Yeah,
typical monologuing distraction, get away.
he's kind of bad at his job.
Yeah, he
And
seems to get captured, but
a
he
lot.
he knows how to talk everyone down. He's kind of like cigarette smoking man in X-Files. He would always let himself be captured, and then he'd be like, and by the way, I know you're not going to kill me because I have information.
And that was the thing I wanted to get on touch base on too. A little bit about the races. Ooh, race war here.
So many. Yeah.
So like the thing that too kind of took me back was like you look at the elves in Lord of the Rings and in the
Right.
movies, and you can make the argument. You can say Robb, but those are elves that are a little bit later on. They're a little bit older. But the
Hmm.
elves in Lord of the Rings were super, super smart. The elves in the show are kind of a bunch of jackasses.
I kind of got that in the Hobbit trilogy, which I didn't care for, but I mean,
Yeah,
you kind of get that if you actually read the Hobbit, where you're just like,
I love the Hobbit.
yeah, it's what it made our top 10 books because I had read that book 3 different times as a
You like
kid.
it? Yeah,
With it would be our
me
book I
too.
lull friends to sleep, and it helped that I had cousins. Do you have any family who are big Tolkien heads? I keep saying heads. I just mean
Nope, I'm the
geeks.
only guy, man. I'm the black sheep of my family, so it's
They're
like
like,
I'm
what
the
the
guy who
fuck is
likes Lord of the
Rob
Rings. Everyone
watching? All
else is
this
like,
dark sorcery.
yeah, yeah. My mom's always like, "What the fuck is wrong with you?" She's like this shirt right here. She's like, "I got you this shirt, and it's Stranger Things, and I don't know anything about the show, but I figured you might like it." And I was like, "Yeah, I think it's okay." So I kind of think like in a way, and I don't want to really bring Game of Thrones in on this, but I thought at first too, and this is kind of, and we talk a lot about this off air cam and on some of our little roundtable discussions,
Yeah.
but I thought it was interesting this idea of having two really strong female characters in two different shows. You had, Gadriel in The Rings of Power, and then you had
Khaleesi.
Rhaenyra
Oh, yeah,
in
Rhaenyra. Yep.
House of Dragon.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it was interesting because they were both women characters that people basically say, they don't have a right to choose their destiny. They can't. Everyone's like, you don't know what you're talking about, and they're both out there to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they both were taking that kind of path, but then it seemed like Ring of Power just kind of was like, well, okay, now we got these other stories we got to do. We're not going to focus on that one so much. And to me, I don't know why, it just seemed like it wasn't as straightforward as it needed to be. It was messy. That's the only thing I can say. But like I said, I do appreciate it. I do appreciate the show
No,
a
that's fine.
lot.
I think it could have been they shot the pilot separate, or maybe just the transition from directors and storyboarding it out differently, and then not knowing when they were gonna truly reveal the Hembrent, Twess, and
Right.
Isildur. Even though us Tolkien
That's
guys
way
know
early.
instantly, as soon as we hear that Isildur is like, even if you're a casual fan of the movies, you're like,
Yeah, that's
isn't that the guy
super,
who
super early.
felled Middle Earth? Yeah,
Yeah,
but
super early.
that's a good point. I have a love-hate relationship with Game of Thrones. I really dug it originally, and then when it felt like they were just picking random chapters from the book and trying to do a
Oh, they
mix
weren't
of
picking chapters at all. Are you talking about the original 7 seasons or the House of Dragon?
just midway through before they ran out of material, and then
Ye pretty
I
much,
and then
pretty much.
they just it was just always. I'm a guy who likes all kinds of content. I just don't like it when the tone is different. Like I can't do Fast and Furious because
No, you're absolutely right. Let me tell
what
you about one of the things I hate about House of Dragon that I've said on our recaps. What I
yes.
hated a lot about House of Dragon was that they made some of the characters less ambitious than they were. So they
Hmm.
did things like, instead of, like, for example, Rhaenyra, like, okay, prime example in Dance of Dragons, when that Vagar kills that kid, he just straight up Aemon One Eye straight up kills him. He straight up kills
Yeah,
him. He doesn't give a shit.
just
In
murders.
the show, they made it to where the dragon didn't listen to him, and you're like, oh, he didn't mean to do that. And it's like, why are you saving their villainous
Why are you
ways
glamorizing
and
these
traits?
guys?
Are you trying to make it to where the audience will still kind of like them? Because he's the bad guy. You're not supposed to like him. You're not supposed to sit there and be like,
I haven't heard
oh, do I
anyone say
kind of
they
like
like
this
him,
guy?
so why glamorize him? Yeah,
Right.
it's and
That's one thing I hate Lord of the Rings that I'm sorry, that House of Dragon did. Was they made the characters less ambitious than they were. Like Rhaenyra, for example, she was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to be the queen." And then actually, kind of when they did the transition with Sir Kristen Cole, when she was like, "I'm not going to give up the throne. I may hate it and I may complain, but I'm still going to be queen." I was like, "That's Rhaenyra right there. That's the real Rhaenyra." When she does the whole "I am your queen and I command you to stay there," like when she does that to her husband, she pulls that card a lot in the books because that's her character. But I don't want to say they dumb them down. They just make them softer.
well, and they're so distracted with it's like someone at HBO must be giving them tips and tricks saying make sure to include Sopranos type, frets and Skinamax
He's got to
moments, and
save the
you're like,
puppy dog. The fans have to like him. He has to save the puppy dog.
he may very well. I just get like it seemed like after the first 5 seasons on the original show, I just felt like they just were very disorganized,
Oh, absolutely.
and then it just felt like it became a matter of what can we do that we can outpredict the fans. And I think they got spoiled. They wanted to do their own thing. And what's his
And let me
name?
tell you what they did too. And I said this on my show. And here's a fucking conspiracy for you, Cam. What they are doing right now in House of Dragon by putting that prophecy in the prince that was promised, that prophecy has nothing to do with the Dance of Dragons. What he is doing is he is basically writing himself to save his ass so he can be like, this is why the original seasons of Game of Thrones were like this because of this in this prequel. And
So it's like they're trying to rewrite their mistakes, which otherwise
they're
were
trying to
intended. They're
rewrite their
doing
books.
It'd be
Yeah.
like if they did another X-Files reboot and then just really tried to just add too much detail to shit that they just thought was cool at the time. Or they could do a Lost where you're like, and by the way, all those visions at the end, all them
Right.
dying, that actually didn't mean anything. And people like to revisit the well and then wish upon it. And then, like you say, it's just the bullshit just stinks to high heaven. It just shines through in the worst possible way because you're like, it wasn't intended. That just doesn't feel authentic at all.
And that's why when I was telling my audience when we were doing the recaps, I was like, doesn't the story seem so good until you get to that prophecy part and you're all like, what is going on? And it's like, right, because they just inserted that shit in the actual story. It doesn't have anything to do with it. Like dude, they even say this
Yeah.
takes place 100 years before the events of Game of Thrones. It's like, then why are you talking about this now?
Right. What did it have to do with anything other than we just want to revisit it because we
just want to
don't.
revisit it.
Oh man. So that's enough about Game of Thrones. Why do you think everyone wants to have like there be a rival show to each show? It's like they kind of do this with Succession and Billions
You
and
really want to know?
the Expanse and the Star
Mine
Treks.
comes from another kind of era that I'm part of, and that was the Monday Night Wars. Cam, do you remember those?
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. It's just old
Yeah,
school stuff breathing
I
in.
think it's the idea of AT&T versus T-Mobile.
ABC
WCW versus
versus
WWF.
CBS. Yeah.
Everyone wants to have that rival. Who's better? Who's better this? And before too, I think if I remember for a while, I think it was when Game of Thrones started. They were like, what's better, Sopranos or Game of Thrones? And it was like,
Right. The Wire or Power. Yeah. Is stuff that's not even on the air anymore. We got to have
yeah,
a finalization. Breaking Bad versus Ray Donovan. Just now
people
it's
just like to compare and
Yellowstone and it's
contrast.
being compared to every other Western like Longmire. And
The
it's
only
like,
show I think that could ever really be compared to Game of Thrones that's not like Game of Thrones is Rome, and that's just because
oh, yeah.
HBO learned right away. It doesn't matter how much money we put into these shows, we're gonna make that money back because
Did you
Rome.
ever read the book Difficult Men in Hard Times?
I have not.
Or Hard Men in Difficult Times. It was talking about all the edgy shows that had come out, everything from Homicide and NYPD Blue to all the other post Sopranos and Breaking Bad shows. And they did a fun retrospect on how the VP, the main programmer of HBO at the time, who had was already in legal trouble for hitting a girlfriend of his, they would always just kind of just be like, we don't care for a lot of our programming on here, but we know we need more of that content because we're looking at the numbers. And he would later went on to
Yeah.
be the head of Stars, and he was the one who said, "Oh, okay, we need edgy dramas and sports shows, and then we got to have something like Power or something to get the Wire and Sopranos subscribers to subscribe to us." But yeah, it is wild how with Sopranos, like they, well, when they, yeah, were developing Rome, they already made Deadwood before that, and at the same time, they were like, make it not and similar, to
Right. They were like,
Sopranos.
spend money, but don't spend too much money on it. And
It's
that's
just
why
so
Rome
contrarian.
failed,
Yeah. Ah, man.
was because they just couldn't afford it anymore. But
But I'm
it's
glad
still
you
a
brought
talked
up
about
Rome.
show. I love Rome still to this day.
It is
And
so underrated. I feel like
yes,
that Oz and Deadwood don't get enough love. They just kind of were
Deadwood does
just
not get
like,
enough love either.
it's like we were there, but we were overshadowed, and it just seems like the show where people like to argue nonstop about, like, those tend to be the ones that get more ratings, and it
Mhm.
sucks because I don't want to tell people don't enjoy it. You should enjoy what you love. If it's been on for 12 years, clearly there's something, regardless of whether I see it or not, that people are still tuning in. There's a reason people. I'm tuning into all the seasons of Criminal Minds now. It's pretty gritty, morbid shit that I want to see every day. But at the same time, there's a reason people are watching Walking Dead spinoff. It's, 1 for
God,
20,
tell me about it.
and even soapy shit like Grey's Anatomy. There's people
I,
who just want the
I don't
same
know how
shit.
you can still be watching Walking Dead and still be entertained at this point. I'm sorry if anyone out there is still in love with that show from season 1
No,
on.
it's fine. I think a lot of them just, I don't know. It seems like some people, that's all they watched, or they don't have anything else to watch, or I
I
don't know.
know people that just watched that never watched a single zombie thing in their life. They're like, I love Walking Dead. And I'm like, have you ever seen anything else that's a zombie? No. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how you get some of the best from Alex Kurtzman's production company, and why the effects just look so fake to me. And I just don't like anyone anymore. They've either killed everyone I liked, or I'm just like,
The story's so saturated.
it's
It's
so
just so
saturated. They keep
saturated.
introducing too many people. But we'll do that for another
But
time.
overall though, dude, I mean, like I was saying though, I really did like Rings of Power. I appreciated it. There were some things that little nitpick things that, as a fan of fantasy and as a fan of Tolkien, I had a problem with. But
No, it's
overall,
fine.
I don't want them to cancel the show. I don't want them to do a full reboot as they're talking about, kind of, because they're talking about scrapping the whole thing and just doing a complete 180
Wait,
reboot of it.
what?
Yeah,
I
because
knew they were recasting the guy playing Azilor to make him look older, but
Well,
man,
I heard, and I could be wrong, that they were kind of disappointed that, like, Prime was disappointed at the way the way the whole show went. They actually were
yeah,
talking about
they had
for a minute
never
just
had
doing the
to
180.
cock block review sites from delaying by a week, because
Right.
I think that's just it. I think a lot of producers are now looking at toxic news boards, and it's like, okay, again,
You
if you
you
don't
people with
like
your
it,
can't have an elf that's black is insane.
it was so stupid. But then unfortunately, post Trump era, we're always going to have some neo-Nazi guys wrecking it for everybody. But it just got, like you say, frustrating, because then there were
Yeah.
people who were legit never going to like it just because they had seen a trailer. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what part of you have to actually sit down and watch the thing? Like, I'm going to have to sit down and suffer through a Twilight or a Saw movie before I can say I did not like that. I have to actually watch whatever sequel of Fast and Furious or Transformers before I can say that was a huge waste of my time. But there's so many who won't do that. They will abuse the privilege. They will watch a clip on YouTube, and it's like, well, you don't have, that's not reviewing. I'm seeing them do it now with this Willow show. Yeah, of heart. And if I'm going to say something is so soulless, I better actually sit down. I better be able to give you a paragraph.
Right.
I think a lot of that's gone. I think a lot of people are just bored and letting just stupid shit just eat them up. Like, if I see something that I really dislike, why should I make it my mission to ruin it for everybody else?
Ruin it, right?
And comment on every YouTube video saying society is dead. How can anyone like this? They are stupid
because they put a black elf in Rings of Power.
They put a black elf. They had I would see that. I
It
would
was a Black
see how
Hobbit, dude.
dare
Did
they
you
have
see
a
that?
strong woman and like she's
There was a Black
unlikable.
Hobbit. A Black
Yeah,
Hobbit.
how dare? Yeah.
Oh god.
It's
Were they
just
in the ghetto part of Hobbiton?
you never know, dude. I mean, I never saw anyone be arrogant about there being humans or dogs in the first one movie. It's
Right.
just like I feel like some people just need to get laid. They need to just
Some people
stop.
just need to stop complaining,
They
right?
need to just focus on matters. Maybe they need to give up TV if they're this toxic
Give up
and they're
TV. No, they need to get back on TV. What you guys need to do is get off the internet and stop reading so much crap. My God.
I don't know, man. I think it's a bit of everything. They need to have all cords like disconnected and just read a book for the first time. Read a
Ugh.
magazine that's not trashy. Yeah, just something because they need something better to do. I see it with some other people who have had to block on social media who like have total mental like health issues, and they are to the point where they're saying so much hateful shit and then playing the victim card, and it's like no, you don't get
Right.
to
No, yeah, I hate people who do that shit.
you don't
Um,
get the sympathy card. You don't get to pull a Kanye here. And
so we're gonna come back around here, our
yeah,
audience, for this
sorry,
last
we're all
bit.
over the place.
I know
Admittedly,
I know it's all good
the
because
rings of power
I
tend to
pretty much
do
said what
that.
I
They
wanted to
tend
say
to
about
show
it.
us all the everything wrong with the world and corrupt us.
Um, I will say this, and this is the last bit I'm gonna say, Cam, but before I gotta actually go, but
He's
what
got
is it?
good.
Yeah, I gotta get going. The one thing I was gonna say is we were talking about Total Recall in the beginning.
Yeah,
And the reason okay, personally, when I first saw, and this
it,
is strictly out of peer pressure from my peers as co-hosts, I should say that now I don't really like the new Total Recall. First, I didn't mind it, but I will tell you why I didn't. I didn't like it. Like, this is why I think it's bad. So,
mhm.
in the first Total Recall, you had this idea of Arnold who might have been a covert agent, and then basically he doesn't know whether he's living his reality or not, or whether he's part of the recall program.
Bingo.
And that's kind of the niche of the movie is you're the whole time following that going, oh shit, is this
It was the
reality? Is this
Matrix of its
real?
day. Yeah.
Now, in the new one, they show Colin Farrell breaking into a facility and then being caught and then being all of a sudden in bed. And it was like, wait a second. Well, now we know he's a fucking like undercover agent. That totally takes away the twist.
I
That's that
concur. It and it,
that's
so
why.
when we were mentioning this before, guys, we were talking about adaptations, reboot versus remake, and how it often gets caught in the clutter because Hollywood PR likes to wave the terms around without actually knowing what either one means. They're kind of like politicians. You shouldn't use words that you just don't know the meaning of. Anyway, but yeah, it was frustrating because there's some ideas, and yet at the same time, it's trying to be its own thing, and then it kind of keeps going a 180 in the worst possible way by then trying to make visual references to the original, and so you're like, so what are we doing here? Are
Right. And
you
what was
your own
funny, they
deal,
didn't go to
your own version?
Mars. And that was what everyone freaked out about. Everyone's like, I can't believe they didn't go to Mars now. And I was like, I didn't really care because when I walked away and came back, it was still Total Recall. I knew exactly what part it was.
Yeah,
The only issue I had is taking that element of the plot away that has the suspense. You basically made it to where the audience already knows the ending. And I was like, we already know he's a fucking agent here. You gave it away. For anyone who had never seen the original and went into this one, you destroyed it for them. And that was
yeah.
what I thought was really bad about
No, I concur. Like I can understand. To me, it wasn't as forgettable as say like the Poltergeist remake, where you're just
that.
like
Nightmare
it's
on Elm
just
Street.
yeah, or Nightmare on Elm Street, where it's just so self-indulgent and disorganized. I can understand remakes like The Departed, which is a remake of Infernal Affairs, or even RoboCop,
Infernal
where
Affairs.
it's trying to do its own deal, or even Dredd, a different version of Judge Dredd. But then when it gets to where, like you say, one minute you're saying we're doing our own deal, and then there's homages to the original with his disguises and everything, and then like you say, just show the magic trick before there is a magic trick. It's
Right.
like it makes you wish they just could have pulled a pretentious, Christopher Nolan type thing or Jordan Peele, where we're just going to freak you out and
Don't care
confuse
about
you.
the original. Push through.
exactly. Break on through to the other side, to quote Jim Morrison. But yeah, it's just like, okay, so what did you want to do with this? Because it just feels like you were getting studio notes and having to say yes to all of them, even though they were all
Right.
very bad ideas.
Right. Someone was like, "Hey, make sure you tell the audience that this guy is an agent right off the bat. That will sell the film. That will be different than the original."
We're
It's
not
like,
talking about any of the other betrayals or questionable
right.
gunplay or people using hostages, even though they clearly got a easy shot for the head. And
Two
we're
tit
talking,
women, nothing.
yeah, we're talking about all the other just abyss of
Three tit women.
plot holes. And Rings of Power, like you say, it's taking its sweet time. It's, I think, I, for me personally, I started when the fourth episode was already up, so I knew there would be like two of them I'd be able to catch up on each week. But that's not easy for everyone. Everyone else, I think they're just impatient. They want instant
Yeah.
results, and unless it's something like Breaking Bad, which weirds them out, or like you say, some of these other shows where they're just like, it's so gory. Oh, it's so sexy. Oh, it's so this. It just seems like everyone wants an instant reaction, even though they know it's a slow burn. But then at the same time, it can also frustrate people because sometimes it's too slow, even for their own good. So it does make you wonder what is the best way, I guess, to well, what are some improvements you want to see before we go on season two, and let alone just for movies in general? Like,
I would like to see them get some, and I know it's going to sound funny and it may sound stupid, but get some poets in there, guys. Get some actual poets that can sit there and write some beautiful dialogue for the elves.
I could see
That
that.
can actually get some character, because one of the things I think the Rings show is missing too is I think there's just not an in-depth look at some of the
There's more
characters.
poetry and will of time, which some of these
Yeah,
filmmakers worked on, and that's a good point because I think if poetry is very calming, even if you're not into it, so
right.
it would be the perfect kind of transition to kind of get people just in the mood to kind of just
But not
escape.
only that, Cam, J.R. Tolkien, as you know, I'm sure you read his books, he wrote poetry. Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings is beautiful. It's very beautiful
it
in the
is so
terms of
poetic.
it when you read it. It's like reading a poem. Everything is very, the Elvish, the language of the elves is beautiful. I mean, it's meant to be, even like the way they're writing, the way he did the writing and everything.
Right?
It needs to come. That's what I would like to see is more emphasis towards the races and how they're really meant to be. That's what
Bingo.
I would like to see is more detail towards that.
I'm with you. That would be a good idea because then we can free ourselves up. Just show, hey, this is a long time coming. I mean, because they got some serious talent on here who's so
Right.
experienced with all other kinds
They
of,
had some cool stuff. One of the things I didn't mention that I liked the dwarf. I like showing the dwarf in city. I
yeah,
loved that they
during the
showed
fourth. That
I
so
loved it.
we kept quoting him how a dog can bark at the moon, but he cannot
Yeah.
bring it down. That was as poetic as it got. And
Right.
Bear McQuarrie, who scored Walking Dead and Battlestar Galactica, we need more of that score. We need more of his orchestras and what have you. But like you say, it seems like we need a little more momentum. We even might need a little more action, even though there's always action aplenty in every episode. It's just like we might need a little more, just because I think we can assume that this show will end the minute Isildur, goes to war and fails us. So,
Right.
what
We
else
know
can
where
we do?
we'll be.
Something, yeah, because he's the Anakin Skywalker of Miller. He
Yeah,
fucks
pretty
everything
much.
up, and however, the difference is he just gets killed by the dark powers. It's
Yeah,
nothing to do with,
in a very unelegant way, face down in a river,
right, 5 dozen arrows in the back. It's
stuck in
like,
his back.
yeah, funny how
And
that
might I
goes.
say before we go, Cam,
Yeah.
on right now on this show, if it is not the if it's not the best podcast on air right now, it's definitely the most handsomest with these two hosts, ladies and
Oh, you're
gentlemen. Let
too
me tell
kind.
you. Let me tell you, ain't none sexier here.
You have way more awesome hair than me, my dude.
I just got that rogue look. You know what I mean? This
Right.
is natural because I'm old.
Hello. How are you doing?
All right,
Well, what
broski.
do you have coming up on Real Sharks you'd like to plug before you dispatch?
Well, on Real Sharks, not much right now. We're gonna be playing a whole game of D&D with each other.
Oh,
We're gonna
really?
be
Is it going to be like Death Scrabble?
yeah, but we're gonna do it Real Shark style, undersea kind of D&D.
Undersea.
um, we're going to definitely get that Cannibal Holocaust going here in the next year, Cam, because I definitely want to get you on for that.
I promise you, I got the uncut version on archive. I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right, sweet. That's basically all we got right now. Next year is going to be a whole new rendition of the show. We're actually growing and making
different programming,
improvements. New programming. So it'll be exciting. I'm actually, I do everything for my show, so I'm writing everything right now. So that's why I don't have too much.
You're ready. I know you're ready.
I don't have too much to say right now because it's still a process and work. But we'll be around. We're always around. We're real sharks, man. Been on the air
Robb,
5 years.
He gets around.
10 years.
Yeah. Okay, well, this was a delight having you on here for this sidebar, and
always a pleasure, Cam.
Anytime. And be safe out there. Enjoy the holiday.
Hit me up, buddy.
Always. We will do 6 more episodes before we go.
Hey, always, man. I love your show. I love coming on your show. This guy is an awesome.
Likewise, you got a cool show too. Edgy.
All right, catch you later, Cam.
You too.
We'll return after these messages.
Do you ever find yourself thinking about who would win in a fight between Goku and Superman? Hi, I'm James Gavsey, and on the Who Would Win show, me and my co-host Ray ignore anything important happening in the outside world and debate fictional battles between characters from comics, movies, and video games.
We got a new show every week, and almost always am I the winner.
Yeah, not true, Ray.
In the past, we've discussed such matches as Captain America versus Darth Vader, Solid Snake versus the Iron Giant, classic matchups like RoboCop versus Terminator, and even the Muppets versus Sesame Street.
That one was crazy. So if you're a fan of geek culture and love a spirited debate, check out the Who Would Win show wherever you get your podcasts, or check us out at whowouldwinshow.com.
We let things pile up in the DVR, we add them to our queues, we wait for the DVDs and Blu-rays. We time shift. The Time Shifters Podcast. Sci-fi, horror, fantasy, superheroes, comedy, action, film, television, maybe some not-so-current events. Find us on iTunes or at timeshifterspodcast.com.
Cool thing about Blind Knowledge is we are in multiple countries. We are worldwide all across the globe. We are in the US, we are in the UK, we are in Canada, Germany, India, Japan. We're in Australia, y'all. BlindKnowledge.com. Now back to the feature presentation.
Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, Naruto, all things that we love, all manga that were originally published in the legendary magazine Weekly Shonen Jump.
But not every series can run for 300 chapters and have a hit anime. This is David.
This is Jordan.
We're the hosts of Shonen Flop. Each episode we look at manga that ran in Jump that didn't quite make it.
We discuss what it did wrong, what it did right, how the series could have turned itself around, and ultimately, was it a flop or not?
Run all your favorite podcast apps, and you can find us at shonenflop.com.
Keep on flopping, floppers.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening. It's a Jack